Alright, the gang. So next up we're going to talk about models. So models are another name for pop-ups. You normally see them on websites. A bit too frequently, in my opinion, for users to either sign up for some kind of email list, maybe to sign into a website, or even to show some kind of promo or image. Now if we click this button right here, we can see an example of a Bootstrap model. So it grays out the background to make it stand out more. And if we click either the cross or the button or the grayed out background, the model is going to go away. So this is what we're going to add to our project now. Okay, so we're going to code two different parts here. First of all, we need to code some kind of button, which a user is going to click on to trigger the model. So that's going to be this section. And then secondly, we have to code the model itself. That's the thing that's going to show when the user clicks on the button. So the button is going to be right at the bottom in some kind of footer below the form. That's where we're coding it right here. So let's start with a section. We don't need an id for this because we're not going to navigate to this section from the navbar. However, we will give this a background color, BG-lights. And then inside that, I'm going to do a container. So div, contain it like so. And I'm just going to paste in the title, which is text center. Stain the loop. And then a paragraph that says get the latest updates as they happen. Alright, so below this, we need some kind of button. And we're going to place that inside a grid. So div, rope. We've seen all this before. And then justify -content. -center to centralize the element in the middle of the row. Okay, so we'll do a div for the column. And it's going to be called MD-8. And also text-center. Alright. And so that means it's going to be full width on very small screens. When it gets to medium-sized screens and up, it's going to be 8 columns in width. And then inside here. And just going to paste in a couple of things and then explain them. So we just have a paragraph tag. First of all, with text muted and a bit of margin. And then below that, we have a button with a class of btn and btn primary. So it's that blue color. And then we have two extra things. We have two attributes. Data bootstrap toggle. And that's saying what it's going to toggle. Well, in our case, it's going to be a model. So it knows to implement the model behavior. And then secondly, the target model that we're going to open when we click on this button. So it knows it's looking for this ID right here. And that will be the ID of the model down here in a minute. And it says register for updates in the center. So let's take a look at that in the browser. Alright, register for updates. What we also need to do is make sure this is spelled correctly. Justify content center to make sure it goes in the middle. Okay, that looks better. So now when a user clicks on this, that's when I want to show the model. So we have to create the model now with this ID right here. So let's do that down here. Okay, then so first things first. We need a div to surround the model. This has a class of model and also a class of fade. This is so it fades in and out when we click on the button. And also we need an id for this. And that ID is equal to a red model, the same ID as this thing right here. The target. So let's paste that in here. So when we click on this button, it knows to look for this model to open. Okay. Now there's also a couple of other things I want to paste in here. And that's these three things. Tab index -once, which takes out of the tab index when you're tabbing through the page. The area labeled by, and that's going to be a modal title. It will come inside the modal later on, and also area hidden is equal to true. Meaning it's not showing by default when we first come on the page. So that's the modal wrap if you like. Now inside we need a modal dialog. So div.modal, hyphen dialog, like so. So this is where all the content of the modal is going to go basically. And inside that, we have div.modal-content. So the dialog is going to be, like the white bubble that pops up on the screen, and then the content inside the bubble. Alright, so inside the modal content, we can have a modal header, a modal body and a modal footer. And we're going to have all three. Let's do with the modal header. First of all, a div with a class of modal-header, and inside that, I want a modal title. And in fact, I'm just going to paste a couple of things in, so you don't have to watch me type everything out from scratch. So we have an h5, which has a class of modal title. And that's just so it styles the title. The ID is modal title. And this tells this area label that this is the title of the modal if you like. Because the modal is labeled by modal title. So it looks for that ID, which is right here. And it can see this is the label for the modal. Okay, so beneath that, we have a button and the type is button. The class is btn close. This makes like a cross button for us in the modal, and Bootstrap automatically positions it in the right place. And then we have this data Bootstrap dismiss attribute, which says what to dismiss when we click on this button right here. And it says dismiss modal, which is this class right here. Okay, so then we have the area label, which is equal to close. Alright, so that's the modal header. Let's now move on to the modal body. So div.modal-body like so. And inside here, I'm going to do a paragraph. First of all, with a bit of alarm, ipsum. And then after the paragraph, I will do a label because we're going to have an input field for a user to enter in their email. And I'm going to say this is for modal email. I've just made that up. You can call this whatever you want. And then also we'll give this a class. And that is equal to form-label. We've seen this previously when we work with forms, and then the label is going to have some text inside it that will just say your email address like so. And beneath that, we're going to do an input. And again, I'm just going to copy and paste this in because I'm super lazy and it helps you because you're not watching me type it out from scratch. And inside this input, we have a type of text. We could change that to email if we wanted to because the user is putting in their email here. The class of form control, which styles the input, we've seen that before. The ID of modal email. So it links up with the label right here and a placeholder. Okay, so that's it for the modal body. After the modal body, we'll do a modal footer. So div.modal-footer. This stuff goes at the bottom of the modal. And we're going to have a button inside here. And the class is going to be equal to btn and btn-primary like so. And inside the button, we'll just say submit. Alright then. So if I save this now and preview, if I click on this, now we see this modal right here. So if we cross away from it, it closes. If we click on the cross right here, it closes as well. Now I'm just going to go back to the code because this btn thing didn't work. And that's because I've misspelled class. So let's save that and see if the button looks better. Okay, looks better now. Cool. Alright, then my friends. So that is a modal pretty easy, right? And there are other variations. So definitely check out the documentation to see what else you can do with modals. Next up, we're going to look at another Bootstrap 5 new component, the off-canvas.